Billerica Public Library's Book Buzz, September's publications. Our first genre is contemporary fiction. A Girl is a Body of Water by Jennifer McCombie. In her 12th year, Caribou, a young Ugandan girl, confronts a piercing question that has haunted her childhood. Who is my mother? Caribou has been raised by women in a small village of Natita, her grandmother, her best friend, and her many aunts. But the absence of her mother follows her like a shadow. Complicating these feelings of abandonment, as Caribou comes of age, she feels the emergence of a mysterious second self, a headstrong and confusing force inside her at odds with her sweet and obedient nature. Seeking answers, Caribou begins spending afternoons with Nasuda, a local witch, trading stories and learning not only about this force inside her, but about the woman who birthed her, who she learns is alive but not ready to meet. Nasuda also explains that Caribou has a streak of the first woman, an independent, original state that has been all but lost to the women of the village. Adrienne Jaffel by David Hajou. Adrienne was a genius, praised as the geyser of Grand Street and the queen of bleak chic. She was a one-of-a-kind artist, a pianist and composer with a rare neurological condition that enabled her to make music that was nothing less than pure, unmedicated emotional expression. And she and her sensibility are now fully integrated into the cultural lexicon. Her music has been portrayed, represented, and appropriated endlessly in popular culture. But what do we really know about her? Despite her renown, Adrienne vanished from public life, and her whereabouts remain a mystery to this day. Beneficence by Meredith Hall. In the years after World War II, the Center family built an Eden-like life on their isolated dairy farm in rural Maine. When tragedy strikes, the close-knit family is shattered. Each must fight their isolation, their own grief and guilt as they attempt to reclaim some semblance of their old life, if they can. Monogamy by Sue Miller. Graham and Annie have been married for nearly 30 years, a golden couple. Their seemingly effortless devotion has long been the envy of their circle of friends and acquaintances. Graham is a bookseller, a big, gregarious man with large appetites, curious and eager to please, a lover of life, and the host of frequent lively parties at his and Annie's comfortable house in Cambridge. Annie, more reserved and introspective, is a photographer. She is about to have her first gallery show after a 6-year lull and is worried that the best years of her career may be behind her. They have 2 adult children. Lucas, Graham's son with his first wife, Frida, works in New York. Annie and Graham's daughter, Sarah, lives in San Francisco. Though Frida is an integral part of this far-flung, loving family, Annie feels confident in the knowledge that she is Graham's latest and greatest love. When Graham suddenly dies, this man, whose enormous presence has seemed to dominate their lives together, Annie becomes lost. What is the point of going on, she wonders, without him? Then, while she is still mourning him intensely, she discovers that Graham had been unfaithful to her, and she spirals into darkness, wondering if she ever truly knew the man who loved her. A Acero by Francois Dominique. Acero, the mushroom, as object of fascination, first observed in Tasmania and South America. It appeared suddenly in France around 1920. It is characterized by its stench and, at maturity, its grotesque beauty. The narrator wanders medieval streets, dense forests, portrait galleries, and rare bookshops as he explores the frontiers of language and boundaries of science, art, alchemy melt away, and the mundane is overtaken by the bizarre, inhabited by creatures born in darkness, both terrible and alluring. Asor is ultimately a meditation on memory and forgetting, creation and oblivion. Just Like You by Nick Hornby. Lucy used to handle her adult romantic life according to the script she'd been handed. She'd meet a guy just like herself, same age, same background, same hopes and dreams. They get married and started a family. Too bad he made her miserable. Now, 2 decades later, she's nearly divorced, 41-year-old school teacher with two school age sons, and there's no script anymore. So when she meets Joseph, she isn't exactly looking for love. She's more on the market for a babysitter. Joseph is 22, living at home with his mother and working several jobs, including the butcher counter where he and Lucy meet. It's not a match anyone could have predicted. He's of a different class, a different culture, and a different generation. But sometimes it turns out that the person who can make you the happiest is the one you least expect, though it can take some navigating to see it through. Ties That Tether by Jane Agaro. At 12 years old, Azea promised her dying father she would marry a Nigerian man and preserve her culture even after immigrating to Canada. Her mother has been vigilant about helping and forcing her to stay well within the Nigerian dating pool ever since. But when another match made by mom goes wrong, Isaiah ends up at a bar enjoying the company and later sharing the bed of Rafael Castellano, a man who is tall, handsome, and white. When their one night stand unexpectedly evolves into something serious, Azir is caught between her growing feelings for Raphael and the compulsive need to please her mother, who will never accept a relationship that threatens to dilute Isaiah's Nigerian heritage. Isaiah can't help wondering if loving Raphael makes her any less of a Nigerian. Can she be with him without compromising her identity? Our second genre is historical fiction. Ruthie Fair by Maxim Loskotov. In Montana's Bitterroot Valley, young Ruthie Fair sees an apparition, a strange, headless creature near a canyon creek. Its presence haunts her throughout her youth. Raised in a trailer by her stubborn, bow hunting father, Ruthie develops a powerful connection with the natural world, but struggles to find her place in a society shaped by men. Development, gun violence, and her father's vendettas threaten her mountain home. As she comes of age, her small community fractures in the face of class tension and encroaching natural disaster, and the creature she saw long ago reappears. The Exiles by Christina Baker Klein. Seduced by her employer's son, Evangeline, a naive young governess in early 19th century London, is discharged when her pregnancy is discovered and sent to the notorious Newgate prison. After months in the overcrowded jail, she learns she is sentenced to the land beyond the seas, Van Diemen's Land, a penal colony in Australia. Though uncertain of what awaits, Evangeline knows one thing: the child she carries will be born on the months long voyage to the distant land. During the journey on the repurposed slave ship, the Madeira, Evangeline strikes up a friendship with Hazel, a girl a little older than her former pupils, who was sentenced to 7 years transport for stealing a silver spoon. Canny, where Evangeline is guileless, Hazel, a skilled midwife and herbalist, is soon offering home remedies to both prisoners and sailors in return for a variety of favors. Our third genre, fantasy. Hench by Natalie Zena Walcott. Anna does boring things for terrible people because even criminals need office help and she needs a job. Working for a monster lurking beneath the surface of the world isn't glamorous. But is it really worse than working for an oil giant or an insurance company in this economy? As a temp, she's just a cog in the machine. But when she finally gets a promising assignment, everything goes very wrong, and an encounter with the so called hero leaves her badly injured. And to her horror, compared to the other bodies strewn about, she's the lucky one. So, of course, then she gets laid off with no money and no mobility, with only her anger and the internet research smarts. She discovers her suffering at the hands of her hero is far from unique. When people start listening to the story that her data tells, she realizes she might not be as powerless as she thinks. Because the key to everything is data, knowing how to collate it, how to manipulate it, how to weaponize it. By tallying up the human costs these cape forces of nature wreak upon the world, she discovers that the line between good and evil is mostly marketing. And with social media and viral videos, she can control that appearance. It's not too long before she's employed once more, this time by one of the worst villains on earth. As she becomes an increasingly valuable lieutenant, she might just save the world. Piranesi by Susanna Clark. Piranesi's house is no ordinary building. Its rooms are infinite, its corridors endless, its walls are lined with thousands upon thousands of statues, each one different from all the others. Within the labyrinth of halls, an ocean is imprisoned. Waves thunder up staircases, rooms are flooded in an instant. But Piranesi is not afraid. He understands the tides as he understands the pattern of the labyrinth itself. He lives to explore the house. There is one other person in the house, a man called the Other, who visits Piranesi twice a week and asks for help with research into a great and secret knowledge. But as Piranesi explores, evidence emerges of another person, and a terrible truth begins to unravel, revealing a world beyond the one Piranesi has always known. Our fourth genre, mystery and suspense. Shadows and Death by J.D. Robb. As it often did since he married a cop, murder interrupted more pleasant activities. Then again, Rourke supposed the woman lying in a pool of her own blood, a few steps inside the arch in a Washington Square park, had a heftier complaint. When a night out at the theater is interrupted by the murder of a young woman in Washington Square Park, it seems like an ordinary case for Detective Eve Dallas and her team. But when Rourke spots a shadow from his past in the crowd, Eve realizes this case is far from business as usual. Eve has two complex cases on her hands: the shocking murder of this wealthy young mother and tracking down the shadow before he can strike again, this time much closer to home. Eve is well used to being the hunter, but how will she cope when the tables are turned? As Eve and the team follow leads to Rourke's hometown in Ireland, the race is on to stop the shadow making his next move. Total Power by Vince Flynn. When Mitch Rapp captures ICE's top technology expert, he reveals that he was on his way to meet a man who claims to have the ability to bring down America's power grid. Rapp is determined to eliminate this shadowy figure, but the CIA's trap fails. The agency is still trying to determine what went wrong when the ISIS operatives helped the cyber terrorist do what he said he could: plunge the country into darkness. With no concept on how this unprecedented act was accomplished, the task of getting the power back on could take months, perhaps even years. Rapp and his team embark on a desperate search for the only people who know how to repair the damage, the ones responsible. But his operating environment is nothing like he's experienced before. Computers and communication networks are down. Fuel can no longer be pumped from gas stations. Water and sanitation systems are on the brink of collapse, and the supply of food is running out. Can Rapp get the lights back on before America descends into chaos? A Deception at Thorncrest by Ashley Weaver. Amory Ames is alone in her country house, Thorncrest, enjoying her last few weeks of peace and quiet as she prepares for the imminent arrival of her baby. Her husband Milo is in London on business, and Amory is content to catch up on her correspondence, organize the nursery, and avoid the well-meaning, if rather overbearing company of the ladies in the village as they prepare for the Springtide Festival. But then a woman appears on her doorstep, also claiming to be Mrs. Ames, Milo's wife. Amory's marriage had its ups and downs in the past, but her faith in her husband has been restored, and Milo has been nothing but thrilled about becoming a father. Though the supposed second Mrs. Ames seems earnest, Amory is convinced she must be mistaken, a belief that Milo confirms upon his homecoming. However, when a second unexpected visitor arrives at Thorncrest, secret identities and whirlwind romances appear to be becoming par for the course. It's not until the day of the festival, when Milo's stable hand Birdie is found dead, that the strange characters appearing in town begin to seem more sinister, and Amory is determined to uncover the killer in the crowd. Troubled Blood by Robert Galbraith. Private Detective Cameron Strike is visiting his family in Cornwall when he's approached by a woman asking for her help finding her mother, Margot Bramborough, who went missing in mysterious circumstances in 1974. Strike has never tackled a cold case before, let alone one 40 years old, but despite the slim chance of success, he is intrigued and takes it on, adding to the long list of cases that he and his partner in the agency, Robin Ellicourt, are currently working on. And Robin herself is also juggling a messy divorce and unwanted male attention, as well as battling her own feelings about Strike. As Strike and Robin investigate Margot's disappearance, they come up against a fiendishly complex case with leads that include tarot cards, psychopathic serial killer, and witnesses who cannot all be trusted. And they learn that even cases decades old can prove to be deadly. The Darkest Evening by Anne Cleves. On the first snowy night of winter, Detective Inspector Vera Stanhope sets off to her home in the hills. Though the road is familiar, she misses a turning and soon becomes lost and disoriented. A car is skidded off the narrow road in front of her, its door left open. She stops to help. There is no driver to be seen, so Vera assumes the owner has gone to find help. But a cry calls her back. A toddler is strapped in the back seat. Vera takes the child, and driving on, she arrives at a place she knows well. Brockburn is a large, grand house in the wilds of Northumberland, now a little shabby and run down. It's also where her father, Hector, grew up. Inside, there's a party in full swing, music, Christmas lights, and laughter. Outside, unbeknownst to the revelers, a woman lies dead in the snow. As the blizzard traps the group deep in the freezing countryside, Brockburn begins to give up its secrets, and as Vera digs deeper into her investigation, she also begins to uncover her family's complicated past. The Invention Sound by Chuck Palahniuk. Gates Foster lost his daughter Lucy 17 years ago. He's never stopped searching. Suddenly, a shocking new development provides Foster with his first major lead in over a decade. He may finally be on the verge of discovering the awful truth. Meanwhile, Mitzi Ives has carved out space among the Foley artists creating the immersive sounds giving Hollywood films their authenticity. Using the same secret techniques as her father before her, she becomes an industry-leading expert in the sound of violence and horror, creating screams so bone-chilling they may as well be real. Soon, Foster and Ives find themselves on a collision course that threatens to expose the violence hidden beneath Hollywood's glamorous facade. Our last genre is nonfiction. Dog is Love by Clive Wine. Every dog lover knows the feeling, the nuzzle of a dog's nose, the warmth of them lying at our feet, even their whining when they want to get up on the bed. It really seems like our dogs love us too. But for years, scientists have resisted that conclusion, warning against analyzing our pets. Enter Clive Wynne, a pioneering canine behaviorist whose research is helping to usher in a new era, one in which love, not intelligence or submissiveness, is at the heart of a human canine relationship. Drawing on cutting edge studies from his lab and others around the world, Wynne shows the affection is the very essence of dogs, from their faces and tails to their brains, hormones, and even DNA. The scientific revolution is revealing more about dogs' unique origins, behavior, needs, and hidden depths than we ever imagined possible. How to Astronaut by Terry Virts. Former NASA astronaut Terry Virts offers an insider's guide to astronauting, behind the scenes look at the training, basic rules, lessons and procedures of space travel, including how to deal with a dead body in space. What's it like to film an IMAX movie in orbit? What exactly to do when nature calls, and much more in this 50 brief chapter book. If Then by Jill Lepore. Founded in 1959 by some of the nation's leading social scientists, Simulmatics proposed to predict and manipulate the future by the way of computer simulation of human behavior. In summers, with their wives and children in tow, the company scientists met on a beach in Long Island under Honeycomb Dome, where they built a people machine that aimed to model everything from buying a dishwasher to casting a vote. Deploying their people machine from New York, Washington, Cambridge, and even Saigon, Simulmatics clients included the JFK presidential campaign, the New York Times, the Department of Defense, and dozens of major manufacturers. Simulmatics had a hand in everything from political races to the Vietnam War to Johnson's administration's ill-fated attempt to predict race riots. The company's collapse was almost as rapid as its ascent, a collapse that involved a failed marriages, suspicious death, and bankruptcy. Exposed for false claims and even accused of war crimes, it closed its doors in 1970 and all but vanished until Lepore came across the records of its remains. Sid Meier's memoirs, A Life in Computer Games. Over his 4-decade career, Sid has produced some of the world's most popular video games, including Civilization, which has sold more than 51 million units worldwide and accumulated more than 1 billion hours of play. This story is about an obsessive young computer enthusiast who helped launch a multi-billion-dollar industry. Writing with warmth and ironic humor, Mayer describes the genesis of his influential studio, Microprose, founded in 1982 after a trip to a Las Vegas arcade, and recounts the development of landmark games from vintage classics like Pirates and Railroad Tycoon to Civilization and beyond.